Night settles differently at the edge of the forest. It doesn't just fall. It seeps in quiet, slow, almost careful, like it knows something lives out there that prefers silence. And tonight, as the last bit of daylight fades, a soft breeze moves through the tall pines, carrying a faint sound, almost like someone whispering a warning. That's when the camera fades in on the old house, standing at the end of a narrow dirt path, away from the town, alone and untouched for years. People call it the quiet house, not because no one lives there, but because even the wind seems to avoid making noise around it. The story begins with Mia, a girl who grew up hearing rumors about this place. She's not reckless, but curiosity has a way of tugging at her, especially when something feels out of place. And the quiet house has always felt out of place. It sits right where the forest begins, one long shadow stretching toward the world outside. Mia never planned to go near it, but some stories have a way of pulling you in, even when you know you should step back. It started a week ago, when Mia found an old journal inside a box her grandmother left behind. Most of it was blank, but a few pages held hurried handwriting. Notes about strange sounds, lights flickering between trees, and a house that breathes when no one is watching. At first, Mia thought her grandmother was just writing down local legends. She had always loved stories, but then she noticed dates. Real dates, recent ones. It didn't make sense. Her grandmother hadn't visited the forest in years. As she flipped through, Mia found a final line scribbled near the back. If someone finds this, don't go there at night. It listens. Mia tried laughing it off, but the words stayed in her mind. And tonight, of all nights, she found herself standing at the beginning of that narrow dirt path, the journal tucked under her arm, the moon glowing pale white overhead. Her best friend Leo followed a few steps behind, shaking his head as he tried to keep up. Leo never liked abandoned places, especially not ones with stories attached to them. But he couldn't leave Mia to wander in alone. "Mia, you seriously think your grandma meant this place?" he asked, stopping when the house came into view. "Because I'm pretty sure she was talking about a different forest. Preferably one with more streetlights." Mia didn't smile. She couldn't. The quiet around the house felt heavier than she expected, like the air itself didn't want them there. "I just want to see," she whispered. "I don't know why she wrote all this, and I don't think I'll sleep tonight if I don't at least take a look." Leo sighed and looked up at the house. The windows were dark, but not in the normal empty house way. It was more like they were hiding something inside. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged slightly, and the front door hung just a little crooked. Yet everything looked untouched, as though time itself had paused at the front steps. The closer they walked, the more the forest seemed to pull back behind them, trees bending slightly as if trying to warn them not to go any further. The dirt path grew softer, the sounds quieter, the night colder. Mia felt her heartbeat in her throat. She didn't want to admit she was scared. Not to Leo, not even to herself, but every instinct whispered that this was not just an abandoned house. Felt aware. They stopped a few feet from the porch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The stillness pressed in, thick enough that even their breaths sounded too loud. Mia cleared her throat and opened the journal, flipping to a page with a small drawing. A sketch of the house. Same porch, same windows, but in the drawing something else was there, a faint outline in the doorway. A figure, watching. Leo leaned over her shoulder. "Okay, that's enough for me. We saw the house. It's creepy. Let's go home and pretend none of this ever happened." But just as Mia stepped back, something changed. A soft creak. A slow, low sound, like wood shifting under weight. They both froze. The front door, crooked, old, and clearly untouched moments ago, moved. Not much, just enough to change the angle, just enough to let a thin strip of darkness spill out from inside. Mia felt her breath catch. Leo took a step closer to her, not forward, not back, just closer. "Did you see?" he started. "Yes," Mia whispered before he could finish. The house didn't move again. It didn't speak. It didn't make another noise. But that slight movement, that tiny shift, changed the entire feeling around them. It wasn't the kind of thing wind could do. It wasn't the kind of thing old wood did on its own. Someone, or something, had touched the door. Mia looked at the journal again. One sentence suddenly felt louder than the rest. "Don't go there at night." She swallowed hard. She should have listened. But now she was here, and the door wasn't just open, it felt like it was waiting. Leo whispered, "We should go. Seriously. Right now." But Mia didn't step back. Her eyes were fixed on the thin darkness behind the door. A darkness that didn't look empty. She felt something pulling her attention, almost calling her name. Not with words, but with a presence she couldn't explain. The forest rustled behind them. A tiny echo drifted through the air, almost like the end of a whisper. Mia took one slow step toward the porch. Leo grabbed her arm. "Mia!" She didn't respond. Her eyes didn't leave the doorway, because something inside the house moved. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the faintest shape shifting deeper in the shadows. Too quick to see clearly but too real to ignore. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't a trick of the moonlight. Something was inside the quiet house, and now it knew they were outside. Mia's breath trembled as the darkness inside the house seemed to stretch toward them, almost leaning forward like a curious shadow. Then, right before she could decide whether to run or step closer, she heard it. A soft sound, a single quiet tap, from inside, as if something was gently knocking back. Mia didn't realize she had stopped breathing until Leo tugged her arm again. His fingers were trembling, and even though he tried to hide it, the fear in his voice was impossible to miss. But Mia wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the open door, on that thin slice of darkness, and on the thought that something inside the quiet house had knocked, soft enough to sound like a question. The sound didn't repeat. The house stayed still, holding its breath the same way Mia held hers. The forest behind them seemed to bend toward the house, as if listening too, waiting for what they would do next. Mia finally stepped back, just one slow step, but that was enough for a small wave of cold air to drift from the doorway. It brushed against her skin like a warning. Leo steadied her before she tripped over the edge of the path. "We're leaving," he whispered, trying to sound firm. "Whatever this is, whatever your grandma wrote, it's not for us. Not tonight." Mia nodded, even though part of her still wanted to look closer, to see what was waiting in that shadowed doorway. But the fear in her chest finally pushed her feet into motion. They turned to walk back down the path, the forest sounds returning a little at a time. Crickets, leaves brushing against each other, the soft thump of their footsteps. But as they got farther from the house, Mia felt something tug inside her. A strange heaviness, almost like she was leaving a question unanswered. Leo walked fast, checking over his shoulder every few seconds. When they reached the edge of the path, he finally let out a shaky breath. "Okay," he said. "We are never doing that again." But Mia didn't reply. She pulled the journal from her bag and held it against her chest, feeling the rough texture of the worn cover. There was something deeper here, something that didn't fit with the simple idea of a haunted house or an old family rumor. The handwriting, the dates, the drawings, none of it made sense. And now the house itself felt connected to her, as if it recognized her somehow. They reached the main road where their bikes were leaning against a fence. Leo didn't waste a second. He climbed on and waited for Mia to do the same. She hesitated, glancing back once more. The dirt path looked darker now, swallowed by shadows that hadn't been there before. It felt like the forest was hiding the house again, tucking it away from the world. As they rode back toward town, the night grew warmer, the air less heavy. Streetlights replaced moonlight. The world felt normal again. But Mia knew the feeling wouldn't last. Inside her room that night, she opened the journal again. She laid it on her desk, letting the pages fall open naturally. They stopped near the middle, at a page she didn't remember reading before. Her grandmother's handwriting filled the top half, the ink darker and the lines less shaky than the others. The house watches from the trees. It is never empty. It is never loud. It listens. It remembers. Mia traced the words with her fingertip. What did it remember? She sat on her bed, leaning back against the wall, replaying everything that happened. The door opening, the cold air, the tiny sound from inside. She didn't imagine it. Leo heard it too. That meant something real was in there. But why had the house reacted when she approached? Why only her? She flipped another page and found a note that sent a shiver through her. If the door opens on its own, do not speak first. Her throat tightened. She hadn't spoken, but she had stepped closer. Was that the same thing? Before she could overthink it further, her phone buzzed. It was Leo. You okay? She typed back. Yeah, just trying to understand all this. A moment passed before his reply came in. We shouldn't go back, Mia. Please. Something's wrong with that place. Mia didn't respond right away. She stared at the journal again, thinking about her grandmother. Her grandmother had never been the type to scare easily. She had always been gentle, calm, someone who made even storms feel quieter. If she had written warnings about the quiet house, they weren't meant to frighten. They were meant to protect. But protect from what? A shadow moved outside her window. Mia froze. It was just a tree branch swaying in the breeze, but her heartbeat quickened. Everything felt different after seeing the house. Like the night itself had changed. She closed the journal and reached for her lamp. She wanted to sleep, to clear her mind. But as she switched off the light, she noticed a small piece of paper sticking out from the back of the journal. She hadn't seen it before. Her fingers shook slightly as she pulled it free. It was an old photograph. The image was faded, the colors washed out, but she could make out the shape of the quiet house clearly. It looked exactly the same as it did now. The same porch, the same crooked door, the same dark windows. But that wasn't what caught her attention. Standing in front of the house were two figures. One was her grandmother, and the other, Mia couldn't recognize. The second figure was taller, standing slightly behind her grandmother, facing the camera but with their face blurred. Not by motion, but as if the picture itself refused to hold their image. Mia's pulse raced. She flipped the photo over, hoping for a date or a note on the back. There was only one word written in her grandmother's handwriting, sharp and hurried. Returned. Returned what? Or who? She set the photo next to the journal and lay back in bed, staring at the ceiling. A dull ache formed behind her eyes as questions kept circling through her mind. She wanted answers, but she knew she wouldn't get them by staying away. The quiet house wasn't done with her. Deep down, she felt a strange certainty, almost like a memory that didn't belong to her. She felt as though she had been near that house before, long before tonight. Maybe when she was younger. Maybe when she was too small to remember anything clearly. Something inside her tugged at that thought, but she couldn't grab onto it fully. By morning, the fear had settled into a quiet determination. She met Leo outside school, and the first thing he said was, "Tell me we're not going back there." Mia didn't answer right away. She looked down the street, watching cars pass by, people walking, normal life flowing around them. Then she said softly, "I think my grandma went inside that house, and something happened to her there. If I don't find out what it was, who will?" Leo rubbed his face. "Mia, this isn't like one of those stories you read. Something knocked from inside. That's not normal. None of this is normal." "I know," she whispered, "but doesn't that make it more important?" Leo stared at her like he wanted to argue, but the worry on her face stopped him. Instead, he sighed deeply. "You're not going alone." She gave a small nod. She didn't want to drag him into danger, but she also knew she wouldn't be able to do this by herself. As they walked toward class, Mia kept thinking about the word on the back of the photo. Returned. The more she repeated it in her head, the more uneasy she felt. It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a reminder, like something had gone back to the house, or someone. And if that was true, then going back might not just be dangerous. It might be exactly what the house was waiting for. That night, Mia sat at her desk with the journal open, the photo beside it, and the quiet hum of her desk lamp filling the room. She thought about the house at the edge of the forest, about the door shifting open, about the sound inside. And as she stared at the sketch her grandmother had drawn, the figure in the doorway, the one watching, she realized something she hadn't noticed before. The shape in the drawing wasn't random. It was the same height as the blurred figure in the photograph. and it was standing in the exact same place. Mia leaned closer, heart pounding. The house wasn't just watching. It was remembering. Mia didn't sleep much the night before. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the blurred figure from the photograph standing on that porch, half hidden in the darkness, waiting. By morning, her thoughts felt tangled, and the weight of the unanswered questions pressed heavily on her. She kept turning the journal pages as if something new might appear, as if fresh ink might rise from the paper and explain what her grandmother had never said out loud. But nothing changed. The same warnings, the same drawings, the same uneasy feeling that the quiet house was connected to her in a way she still didn't understand. After school, the sky was unusually gray, a soft layer of clouds stretching across the horizon. The air felt still, almost expectant. Leo walked beside her, hands stuffed in his pockets, glancing at her every few seconds like he was checking whether she might suddenly turn and head toward the forest again. "So," he finally said, "what's the plan tonight? Please don't say visit the house again." "We won't go inside," Mia murmured. "Not yet, but I want to look around. The forest, the path, everything. Maybe there's something my grandma wrote about that we didn't notice the first time." Leo groaned under his breath, but he didn't say no. That was how she knew he'd come with her. As they walked home, Mia replayed the moment the door moved. She tried convincing herself it could have been the wind, but the memory refused to soften. It wasn't the kind of movement old would made naturally. It had been deliberate, slow, careful, as if something inside had been curious about who was knocking on its silence. Mia met Leo just before dusk. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in muted orange tones. They rode their bikes toward the forest, the familiar town fading behind them as the trees grew taller and denser. The quietness returned long before they reached the dirt path. Mia felt it brush against her, the same heavy stillness, like the forest recognized her from the night before. When the quiet house came into view, it looked exactly the same, yet different at the same time. Mia couldn't explain it. The house didn't move or change shape, but the air around it felt aware, like it was waiting for something it expected her to bring. "We're not going on the porch," Leo said, voice low but firm. "And we're definitely not knocking." Mia nodded, though her eyes stayed locked on the front door. Tonight it was closed again, perfectly still, too still. They began circling the house, stepping carefully through the tall grass. Mia studied the ground, looking for footprints or signs someone had been there recently. The earth was soft enough to leave shapes behind, but she found nothing. No tracks, no scuffs, nothing to suggest the house had been visited in months. Leo checked around the windows. "Every one of them is shut," he said quietly. "If someone's inside, they're not coming out." Mia moved toward the back of the house. She expected it to look forgotten and empty, but instead she found something strange. Planks of wood stacked neatly against the wall, each one weathered but not rotten. An old metal bucket rested nearby, half filled with nails. They looked untouched for years, but arranged too intentionally to be abandoned. Leo joined her. Why would someone leave all this here? It's like they started fixing the place and then just stopped. Mia ran her fingers over the wood. Felt oddly smooth, as though someone had sanded it recently. But that didn't make sense. If someone was repairing the house, why didn't anyone in town talk about it? Why did everyone treat it like a place that should be avoided? As Mia turned to leave the back area, something on the ground caught her eye. A thin, frayed piece of red fabric was stuck under a rock near the foundation. She crouched down and pulled it free. Felt old, soft with age, almost delicate. Leo frowned. "What is that?" "I'm not sure," Mia whispered, brushing dirt off it. The fabric looked like it had been part of clothing, maybe a sleeve or a scarf, but it was too faded to tell. Mia folded it and slipped it into her pocket, feeling the strange tug of connection again. They continued searching, but the forest grew thicker the farther they walked. The trees leaned inward, branches high above them forming a quiet canopy. Birds rustled occasionally, but even their movements seemed subdued, hesitant, as though they didn't want to linger near the house. Then Mia noticed something carved into a nearby tree trunk. It was faint. Time had worn it down, but she could still make out the shape. A small circle with a single line cutting through it. She didn't recognize the symbol, but it felt familiar. The same way an almost forgotten memory feels when it brushes against the edge of your mind. Leo stepped closer. "Do you think your grandma made that?" The thought startled Mia. She hadn't considered it, but the more she looked, the more she realized the symbol matched one she had seen in the journal. Not drawn clearly, just sketched quickly in the margin near a note warning about the house. She flipped through the journal to find it. The same symbol was scribbled next to the line. "Mark the trees so you don't lose your way." Mia's stomach tightened. Had her grandmother walked this path alone? Had she carved these symbols to guide herself? And if so, why would she need guidance unless the forest near the house changed somehow? Shifting, confusing, watching? As Mia pondered this, the wind drifted past her, carrying a faint sound. So faint that at first she didn't know if she imagined it. It was distant, muffled, almost like a soft humming echoing through the trees. Leo's head snapped up. "You heard that too, right?" Mia nodded slowly. It came from the left. But when they turned in that direction, the forest looked empty, only shadows stretching between the trees. They walked toward the sound carefully. The humming didn't repeat, but the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to thicken the deeper they went. Mia felt the same pressure she felt near the house, as if the forest itself was paying attention. After a few minutes, they reached a small clearing. In the center stood an old wooden post, half buried in the soil. The top was cracked, and bits of moss grew along the sides. Something was carved into it, words faded and incomplete, but still readable if Mia leaned close enough. "Do not stay after the third sound." Leo's face went pale. "Third sound? What does that mean? First sound was the knocking, right?" "I think so," Mia whispered, "but we haven't heard a second." They stood silent, both listening, both afraid of what might happen if the second sound came too soon, or if the third arrived before they understood what any of it meant. Mia touched the post gently, running her fingers along the carved warning. It wasn't written hurriedly. It wasn't panicked. It looked deliberate, purposeful. Someone had wanted this message to last. Someone who knew what happened after the third sound. As Mia pulled her hand back, she noticed something else carved on the side of the post. A name. Her breath caught. The name was her grandmother's. Leo stepped closer. "Mia, this is bad. This is really bad." But Mia barely heard him. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Her grandmother had come here. She had carved warnings. She had marked trees. And she had left behind a journal filled with things she never wanted Mia to face alone. A soft breeze moved through the clearing. A moment later, somewhere deep in the forest, a faint echo sounded. Not a hum this time. A low, drawn-out creak. The second sound. Leo grabbed Mia's hand instantly. "We need to go. Right now." Mia didn't argue. They turned back the way they came, moving quickly but trying not to run. The forest felt tighter, closer, as if the trees leaned in to listen to their footsteps. The path didn't look the same, the ground unfamiliar despite walking it minutes earlier. The house appeared again through the branches, its shape dark against the dimming sky. The front door remained shut, but the stillness around it felt heavier now, thick with the promise of something watching from behind those windows. As Mia and Leo hurried down the dirt path toward the open road, Mia glanced back one last time. The house stood silent, but this time, she knew the silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. Mia didn't look back again until she and Leo reached the familiar streetlights near town. Even then, she only glanced over her shoulder once, just to make sure nothing had followed them out of the forest. But the path behind them was empty, the darkness settling into its usual quiet. Anyone else would have thought the night looked normal. Mia knew better. She and Leo walked the rest of the way home in silence. Not the comfortable kind. This silence felt tight, stretched thin, like each word they didn't say made the air colder around them. Only when they reached her front porch did Leo finally speak. "We can't go back," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I know you want answers, Mia, but something out there doesn't want us near that house." Mia held the journal close to her chest. She wanted to say she understood. She wanted to say she agreed, but the truth pressed against her like a weight she couldn't ignore. "My grandmother went back," she said softly. She didn't stop. She kept going until she had to leave warnings behind. If she thought it was important enough to carve in wood and write in a journal, then I have to follow it. Leo rubbed his hands over his face. "You're going to get pulled into something you don't understand." Mia looked down at the journal. "I already am." She went inside, closing the door behind her, though the quiet of her house didn't feel much safer. Her room seemed smaller, the shadows deeper, the edges of the walls dimmer. She sat at her desk and opened the journal again, flipping back to the carved symbol she saw on the tree. She traced it with her fingertip, feeling a strange pulse beneath her skin, almost like the symbol was a key, and she was close to figuring out what it opened. She turned the page. A new section caught her eye. She hadn't noticed it before, the writing squeezed near the bottom, as if her grandmother had added it at the last moment, in a rush. "The second sound comes when it wakes." Mia's breath hitched. The second sound. The creak in the forest. It wasn't just a warning. It was part of something. Pattern. A sequence. She scanned the next line. "Do not be near the house for the third." Her chest tightened. She whispered the words aloud, hearing how soft and uncertain her voice sounded. If the third sound was the one they were supposed to fear most, then what exactly happened when it echoed through the forest? The journal had no answer, only the warning. She fell asleep gripping it, like letting go might somehow bring the third sound closer. The next morning, she woke with a start. Her room was bright, sunlight cutting across her desk. For the first time since she'd found the journal, she felt a small breath of relief. The day looked normal, quiet, safe. But then she saw the photograph on her nightstand. It wasn't where she left it. It was turned around, face down. Mia's pulse jumped. She picked it up, hands shaking slightly. The back of the photo still held the same single word, returned. But now there was a tiny smear of dirt on the corner. Fresh dirt. Soil dark enough to look like it had been taken from the forest ground. Her stomach twisted. Someone had touched it. She hurried to meet Leo, not even bothering to eat breakfast. He was waiting outside his house, and the moment he saw her face, he knew something was wrong. "What happened?" She handed him the photo. "It was moved." Leo turned pale. "By who?" Mia shook her head. "I don't know, but someone was in my room, Leo. They didn't take anything. They didn't break anything. They just touched this." Leo stared at the photograph for a long moment, then exhaled shakily. "Mia, what if this isn't about the house? What if the house is connected to you? To your family?" Mia swallowed hard. The thought had brushed her mind before, but hearing it out loud made the suspicion sharper, heavier. She opened the journal again, flipping through the pages like something new might appear if she looked long enough. She stopped at a page with a small sketch of a doorway, the same doorway of the quiet house. Her grandmother had drawn it with a shaky hand, but the meaning was clear. Something always stood there, watching, waiting. The day passed slowly. Mia kept feeling like someone was behind her, even in crowded hallways or noisy classrooms. Every sudden sound made her jump. Every shadow felt wrong. Even Leo, trying his best to stay calm, watched the windows more than the teacher. When the final bell rang, Mia felt a chill run down her back. She knew what she had to do. She didn't want to say it, but the truth wouldn't stay quiet anymore. "We have to go back tonight," she said. Leo stared at her like she had lost her mind. "Mia, no. No." There was a second sound. "You saw the warning. That's why we have to go," she said. Her voice steady, but her heartbeat loud and uneven. "The third sound could happen any night. If we don't figure out what causes it, if we don't understand what my grandmother was trying to stop, then the house will keep waking up and we'll never know why." Leo hesitated, looking torn between fear and loyalty. In the end, loyalty won. It always did. "Fine," he whispered, "but we stay together, no matter what." As the sun began to set, they rode their bikes back to the forest. The air felt thicker tonight, heavier, pressing down on them. The trees stood unnaturally still, no wind rustling their branches. Even the birds were silent. When the quiet house appeared through the thinning trees, Mia felt her breath catch. The front door was open, not wide, just enough to show a sliver of darkness inside. The same thin shadow she'd seen the first night, but this time the angle was different. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't subtle. It looked like an invitation. "Mia," Leo whispered, "this is wrong. We shouldn't be here." But Mia stepped closer, her feet moving before she could stop them. The journal felt warm in her hand, almost buzzing. The air around the house felt colder than the rest of the forest, like the house was breathing out frost instead of air. As she reached the bottom step of the porch, she saw something lying on the wooden boards. Another scrap of red fabric. This one larger, curled slightly at the edges, as though someone had torn it minutes ago and dropped it where she would see it. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. It matched the piece she found behind the house. Same fabric, same shade, same age. Leo whispered, "Where is it coming from?" Mia looked at the doorway. The darkness inside shifted. Not much, not enough to see clearly, but enough to know something was there. Something waiting. The forest behind them stayed silent. The house in front of them held its breath. And then, from deep inside the shadowed hallway, a faint sound drifted out. Not loud, not sudden, just enough to make Mia's heart stop. A low, slow, echoing thud. The third sound, and everything went still. The third sound didn't echo like the others. It wasn't a creak from the forest or a whisper from the wind. It was deeper, like something heavy shifting its weight after a long time of being still. The sound rolled through the doorway and out onto the porch, sinking into the ground beneath Mia's feet. She felt it more than heard it, as if it traveled straight up her spine. Leo grabbed her arm immediately. "Mia, we're leaving. Now." But Mia couldn't move. The darkness inside the quiet house didn't feel silent anymore. It felt aware, awake, almost alert. The door, half open just a moment ago, seemed to breathe outward, letting a cold stream of air drift over her skin. The forest behind them didn't make a single noise. Even the insects had gone quiet, as if the entire place was waiting for what would happen next. Then Mia noticed something she hadn't seen before. A faint glow deep inside the house, dim and pulsing, like a lantern flickering behind several walls. It wasn't warm. It wasn't comforting. It felt unnatural, like the house was revealing a part of itself it wasn't supposed to show. Leo tugged harder. "Mia, look at me. This is the third sound your grandma warned about. We have to go before whatever that thing is gets any closer." She finally blinked and took a shaky step back, but before she could turn away, the glow inside the hall flickered again. This time, it stretched upward, forming a soft outline, tall, thin, swaying slightly. The figure wasn't clear, not enough to see its face, but the shape was unmistakable. It matched the figure from the photograph, the blurred one standing beside her grandmother. Mia's breath caught. "Leo, that's the same shape. The one from the picture." Leo didn't look. He didn't want to. "Mia, please come down the steps." But then something else happened, something neither of them expected. A soft tapping came from behind them, not from the house, from the trees. Mia spun around. The forest was still dark, but between two tall pines, something flickered. Not light, movement. A shadow shifted for a split second, then vanished. Another tapping sound followed, this time closer. It wasn't loud or sharp. It was steady and soft, like someone tapping their fingers gently against bark. Leo whispered, "There's something in the forest too." The realization hit Mia like cold water. The house wasn't the only thing awake. This wasn't just one danger. Whatever her grandmother had tried to warn them about, whatever she had faced, was bigger than a single doorway or one silent house. There were two sources of danger now, two things watching them. She clutched the journal tightly and stepped down from the porch, her legs unsteady. Leo backed away with her, eyes darting between the house and the tree-line. "We have to leave," he whispered, "before both of those things come closer." But the moment they reached the dirt path, another sound echoed through the forest. Not a tap, not a hum, A voice, soft, barely audible, but undeniably human. Mia. She froze. Her name drifted through the trees like a breath carried by the wind. But the voice wasn't her grandmother's. It wasn't anyone she recognized. It was calm, almost gentle, but something about it felt wrong. Too steady, too smooth, like someone trying to mimic human speech. Leo whispered her name, panicked. Mia, don't listen. Don't answer. The voice repeated, Mia, come here. She swallowed hard. It knows my name. The trees shifted again. A tall shadow moved behind the undergrowth, slipping deeper between the trunks. Not hiding, leading, guiding. Leo stepped in front of Mia. You are not following that. But when Mia looked back toward the house, she saw something else. The faint light inside flickered rapidly, like the figure was growing agitated. The door creaked softly, widening another inch. 2 threats. One pulling from the forest, one waiting in the house, and somehow both knew her. A sudden cold wind swept through the path, rustling leaves, carrying the voice again, this time a little louder. Mia, it's time. Leo's face drained of color. They're talking to you, both of them. Why you? Mia didn't know the answer. She didn't want to know, but the journal did. She felt it. Like the pages she hadn't read yet were vibrating beneath her fingers. She opened it with trembling hands, flipping frantically until one line caught her eye. When the house wakes, the forest follows. Her pulse raced. The warnings hadn't been separate. Her grandmother hadn't just been scared of the house. She had been scared of the connection between them. Another line below it, one she had never noticed before, almost hidden by the curve of the spine. It calls to the bloodline. Mia's heart stopped. Bloodline. Leo leaned over her shoulder and read it too. Mia, your grandmother didn't just find the house. Found her. And now it's found you. Before she could respond, the voice in the forest grew sharper, more urgent, no longer calm. Mia. This time it sounded closer. Much closer. The figure inside the house flickered again, the glow stretching taller, reaching the doorway as if preparing to step through. Leo grabbed her hand. We're leaving. Now. But when they turned to run, the dirt beneath their feet shifted slightly. Just a tremor, small but enough to stop them in their tracks. The path behind them darkened, shadows stretching across it like long, thin fingers blocking the way out. The forest seemed to close in from behind. The house loomed ahead. They were trapped between the two forces, both pulling, both waiting. Mia took a shaky breath, gripping the journal with both hands. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know which direction was safer, or if any direction was safe at all. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever her grandmother had faced here, it was happening again. And this time, it wasn't going to let her walk away easily. The ground trembled again, harder this time, and Mia felt her balance slip for a moment. The forest behind them seemed to shift like one giant shadow leaning forward. The house pulsed with that strange glow, brighter with every second. Both forces were tightening around her, closing off every path. Leo squeezed her hand, his voice low but steady. Mia, choose something. Anything. We can't just stand here. But Mia suddenly understood it wasn't about choosing a direction. It was about choosing why the house and forest were calling to her at all. Her grandmother hadn't run. She had faced whatever lived here, even if it meant she never escaped. Mia's chest tightened, but she knew she couldn't keep stepping backward and hoping the darkness would let her go. She took one slow breath and stepped forward. Not toward the forest, not toward the house, but toward the space between them. The moment she moved, both forces reacted. The house's glow sharpened, stretching outward like reaching arms. The forest shadows pulled tighter, forming shapes that shifted and swayed as if whispering to each other. Leo whispered, "What are you doing?" Mia held the journal up. "They're reacting to me, not to the house, not to the forest, to me." She flipped desperately through the pages until she saw a line written in darker ink, almost carved into the paper. "Break the echo, break the hold." She didn't know what it meant, but the trembling ground suggested, She didn't have time to figure out the perfect answer. She pressed the journal to her chest and shouted, her voice cracking through the silence. I'm not afraid of either of you. This ends here. The glow in the doorway flickered violently. The tall shape inside leaned forward, as if Mia's words had hit it directly. The forest shadows rippled, pulling back for the first time as if startled. Then, suddenly, something snapped. An invisible thread Mia couldn't see but felt break right through her chest. A gust of cold air burst outward from the house and collided with a warm wind from the forest. The two forces clashed in the space between, swirling around Mia in a storm of shifting shadow and pulsing light. Leo grabbed her, trying to pull her away, but she shook her head. I have to finish this. The storm grew louder, a deep rumbling like distant thunder. The shadow from the forest stretched into a thin figure, trying to reach Mia's hand. The glowing shape from the house extended toward her too, as if both were fighting for the same thing, her. Mia pressed her eyes shut and focused on the one thing she still trusted, her grandmother's words. She whispered them softly, letting the memory steady her. When the house wakes, the forest follows, but the bloodline can break the echo. She repeated the words louder, feeling them fill her voice. Break the echo. Break the hold. A deep crack echoed through the air, and the glowing figure suddenly jerked backward as if yanked away. The shadow from the forest shrank, losing its shape. The wind twisted into one final spiral around Mia, then burst outward in every direction. Everything stopped. The forest went still again, like someone pressed pause on the world. The glow inside the house faded slowly until there was nothing left but darkness. The pressure in the air vanished. The path behind them cleared, shadows dissolving like smoke under sunlight. Leo looked around, almost afraid to breathe. Did you just stop all of it? Mia nodded, though her hands were shaking. I think I broke the connection. Whatever tied those things to me, it's gone. For a moment, silence hung between them. Real silence. Not the heavy kind that came with warning, but calm and almost peaceful. They finally stepped away from the house, moving down the path without anything blocking their way. The forest seemed normal again, just trees, just leaves, just wind. Mia dared to believe it was over. But just as they reached the edge of the clearing, a soft sound made Mia turn back. A single page of the journal flipped open on its own. The wind was gentle, too gentle to move paper like that. Leo frowned. Mia, I thought the connection was gone. She walked slowly back toward the journal, her heart beating harder with every step. The page that had turned was blank except for a fresh line of handwriting. Thin and shaky, like someone writing from far away. The echo breaks, but the voice remains. Mia stepped back quickly, her breath catching. Leo, someone wrote this, right now. Before either of them could react, the house door, closed just moments ago, creaked open by an inch, as if someone inside was giving a quiet, deliberate reminder. Leo whispered, I thought you ended it. Mia swallowed hard. I ended one part of it. The wind rustled through the trees behind them. Not threatening this time, but purposeful, almost like a whisper passing through branches. The house didn't glow, the shadows didn't move, but the message was clear. The story wasn't finished. The danger hadn't disappeared. It had only changed. And as Mia closed the journal gently, a cold realization washed over her. Whatever presence had reached for her before wasn't gone. It had simply stepped back, waiting, watching, choosing a better moment to return. Mia didn't dare move at first. The forest around them looked calm again, but she didn't trust it. Not after everything she'd seen, not after the house had opened its door one last time. She closed the journal slowly, feeling the rough texture of the old cover under her fingertips. It felt different now, lighter somehow, as if whatever weight it carried for so many years had finally loosened its hold. Leo watched her closely, waiting for her to say something, but for once, Mia didn't know where to begin. They walked away from the clearing in silence, following the winding path back toward the main road. The forest no longer felt alive in that strange, watching way. Now it was just a forest again, full of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. Every step away from the house made Mia breathe a little easier, though the message in the journal stayed sharp in her mind. The echo breaks, but the voice remains. She knew it wasn't meant to scare her, not the way the house had before. It felt more like a reminder, a final message from the presence she'd broken free from. Leo finally spoke when the trees thinned and they reached the small gravel turnout where Mia had parked the car. "Do you think it's over? I mean, really over?" His voice was soft, almost hopeful. Mia leaned against the car door for a moment and looked back at the path they had just come from. The forest swayed gently in the breeze. Nothing felt threatening. Nothing felt out of place. She exhaled slowly. "I think the part that belonged to me, the part connected to my family, that's done. Whatever tied the house and forest to us, it's finished." Leo nodded, though worry still lingered in his eyes. "But the voice part?" Mia gave a small, tired smile. "Not everything in that place was trying to hurt us. Some of it, I think it was trying to guide us. Maybe warn us." She touched the journal again. "And maybe that voice, whatever it is, won't disappear just because we left. But it doesn't feel like something that wants to follow us." They got in the car and Mia started the engine. As they pulled onto the narrow road, the forest stretched behind them like a long shadow. She didn't look back again. She didn't need to. She felt the shift inside herself. The fear that had wrapped around her for days had loosened its grip. She no longer felt tied to a past she didn't understand. For the first time since the letter arrived, she felt like she could finally breathe without wondering what waited in the dark. The drive back into town felt longer than usual. The sky had turned pale, hinting at sunrise even though it wouldn't fully break for another hour. Leo rested his head against the window, eyes half closed, still shaken but calmer. Mia knew he wanted answers, real answers, but there were some things she couldn't explain. Not because she didn't want to, but because the truth of that house didn't fit into simple, neat explanations. When they reached Mia's apartment, the world felt strangely normal again. Streetlights hummed, cars passed by, a dog barked down the street. Reality felt solid, familiar. They sat in the car for a long moment before either of them moved. "You okay?" Leo finally asked. Mia nodded, though her thoughts were still heavy. "Yeah, I think I will be." She looked at him. "Thank you for staying with me through all of that." Leo gave a small laugh. "Well, I wasn't going to leave you alone in a haunted forest." She laughed softly, something she hadn't done in what felt like days. "You know, I'm not even sure haunted is the right word." Leo raised an eyebrow. "What would you call it then?" Mia thought for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I think it was trapped, stuck between memories and echoes, and we just happened to walk into the middle of it." Leo nodded slowly. "And you freed it?" Mia didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure she'd freed anything fully, but she knew she had changed something, broken something that had waited too long for someone to understand it. Inside her apartment, the air felt warm and safe. She placed the journal gently on the small table near the window. It felt strange setting it down, as if letting go of something she had carried for years without knowing it. Leo sank into the couch with a sigh. "You going to read the rest of it?" he asked. Mia looked at the journal again. She hesitated. "Eventually, but not now." She paused. "I think the worst parts of it are done. And the rest, maybe it's just her story. My grandmother's. Not a warning." Leo nodded. "You deserve time to breathe." For the next few days, Mia stayed close to home. Normal tasks felt comforting. Making coffee, watering her plants, answering emails. The house at the edge of the forest lingered in her mind, but no longer with the same fear. More like a distant, strange memory that had finally made sense. One evening, as she sat by the window with the journal in her lap, she finally opened it again. The pages were still filled with her grandmother's handwriting. Faded, shaky, but full of emotion. More than warnings, they were reflections. Memories of her childhood spent wandering the woods, stories of the unusual things she felt long before Mia was born, and thoughts about the strange connection their family shared with that place. Near the end of the journal, Mia found something she hadn't noticed before. a short passage tucked between two loose pages. It was written more neatly, as if her grandmother had taken her time. If the echo ever reaches you, don't be afraid. It seeks the one who listens, the one who will understand. You are that one, not to carry the fear, but to end it. Mia closed her eyes for a moment. The words felt gentle, almost comforting. She whispered, "I hope I did it right." A soft breeze drifted through the window and brushed the pages of the journal. Not forceful, not unnatural, just a simple wind. Mia smiled, knowing there was nothing left in it trying to pull her back. Days slipped into a week. Life returned to its normal rhythm. Leo checked on her often, but the fear he had seen in her before was gone. She felt grounded again, her thoughts clearer than they had ever been. Sometimes she'd catch herself thinking about the house. The cracked windows, the silent doorway, the faint glow that had once filled it. But the memories no longer clung to her. One afternoon, Mia drove back toward the forest. Not to the house. She didn't need to see it again, but to a small overlook a few miles away. From there, she could see the tops of the trees stretching endlessly across the horizon. The wind whispered softly through the branches, but nothing about it felt heavy or dark. She stood there for a long moment, letting the quiet settle around her. She didn't feel watched. She didn't feel pulled. She felt free. Before leaving, she took one last look toward the distant tree-line and whispered, "Thank you for letting me go." When she turned away, the forest stayed still behind her, peaceful as if resting after a long, complicated story finally brought to an end. And when Mia reached her car, she didn't feel the need to look back again.